to introduce Dan and Isabel. They are two coaches from Mosbourne Academy, who we support with LYR, who have a big program. They've got 15 crews, I think, racing in Race the Thames between juniors and parents. Anyway, they're going to be conducting the interview, if that's all right.
Scary
indeed. No, they're very friendly. Well, Isabel is. I mean, Dan's, you know.
Whoa. Where's this come from? Well,
so,
it's,
yeah. I'll hand over to Dan. Go on.
We'll get cracking. First of all, it's nice to meet you on the screen, Steve. I have actually
good to see you.
I have actually seen you in person once at my local rowing club, but it was from afar, and I was like, I don't know if I can go and talk to this guy because he's quite up there, and I wasn't at the time. Not that I have been, but yeah, it was quite a scary prospect to come and talk to somebody who I sort of looked up to when I was a lot younger. So it was a bit strange, but it's pretty cool that you're on our call now and joining in with our stuff that we're doing right now. So
you still look pretty young to me. What rowing club was that?
I take this hat off, and definitely not young. That was Starport Boat Club in the Midlands. I believe it was either your son or somebody that you were coaching had come to race. So that was pretty cool to see you at our local boat club, which was a big sort of shock when we looked around the corner and my granddad pointed to me and went, "Do you know who that is?" But I'm not really sure.
That shows you my age when it's your grandfather that's pointing me out.
Well, he's now in his late 70s, so it's not that you're not that old. You can't be that old.
Thank you.
Right, we've got a couple of questions that a couple of people at LYR have collated together. A few things that are going to sort of push you to answer. First one we've got is so you've obviously seen rowing from some sort of like your amateur days and then through the 80s and through the heights of UK sport funding, and you've also seen rowing from a state school all the way through to sort of like elite club, top of GB. And what is your opinion of the future of the sport?
Well, a simple way of as a sport, we've got to diverse. We've got to be able to draw more people in from different backgrounds. Traditionally, the sport was a university, top university and private school sport, which then was mainly boys' schools, and so not very many girls involved in it. And I've seen women's rowing change through the, nice of you saying the 80s, but I was actually started in 76, so most of the 70s as well as the 80s. And that my rowing club, Great Marlow School, which is, you're correct, is a comprehensive school. The head of the English department there was loved two sports. One was rugby, the other was rowing. And our school didn't really cater for either. But he was also captain of Marlow Rowing Club. And so he used to take a rugby side together, which I was involved in. And he asked a few individuals if they would like to go out on the river during school time. And that for me was absolutely a no-brainer. And so that's how I got involved in the sport on a Wednesday afternoon, going to try the sport. Within 2 weeks, there was 12 of us from my year group. A few of them decided that wasn't for them, and we ended up with 4/5 people, coxed four rowers and one cox, and that was the school rowing team. So that's how I got involved in the sport. But it was just fun. It was very engaging. He made it fun. Marlow regatta in those days was the biggest one-day regatta in the world, and but that was for of people not like from my background. It was a festival fun week. Is that fair came to the town, and so it was a good for a youngster growing up in the Marlow area. It was good fun. But yeah, there were people messing about in boats over there, but it was all about the fairground and having fun. And so it never really crossed me as going to try the sport. And without Francis Smith from Great Marlow School, is that I probably would have never tried the sport, and my life would have been very different, and probably the Olympic medal table of our country may have been a little bit different as well. So it had a huge impact. So going forward, what we've got to do is to be more diverse. There's sort of more diverse groups, opening the sport up to as many people as possible. Now, saying all that, where there is a river or a lake that's rowable, there is a rowing community. The image is private schools and universities. The university is an interesting one of how that's engaged over the years. Of the UK, going back a couple of centuries, is that the rivers were our transport system. And so wherever we have rivers is that tend to be cities, big towns, and they tend to have rowing clubs and rowing communities. So that's where the rowing clubs are very linked with those institutions from that point of view. But as I started off with is that it was very apparent when I first started rowing, it was more of a male-orientated sport, and that has completely changed. Now what we've got to do is to make sure the change is more of making it even more accessible for everybody involved in the sport. And a good example.
And how do you?
Is,
sorry, Steve. How do you think that we? How do you think that we push that out to groups of people that we wouldn't normally attract? So when we're at school at Mossbourne, we've got all backgrounds, all cultures, lots of different religions, lots of different views and things from our community, from everyone. And because rowing isn't a typical sport that everybody would try in that area, it's kind of new and fresh for everyone. How do we make it so we can get all of these people from all of these different areas and different backgrounds, different cultures, different religions, different genders? How do we get them into that sport? What is it that we do that draws them in and keeps them there? Because we can go to anybody on the street and go, come and have a go at rowing, and they go, okay, I'll come and do that. But is it cool? Is it interesting? Is it fun? How do we get that?
But first of all, it's down to us to go out and engage with people. I think from my career, it was always the other way around. It was that rowing clubs waiting for people to knock on their doors, and so it tends to run in family family rowing trends and people that sort of linked in with that. Being involved in Marlow Rowing Club. My wife was captain of Marlow Rowing Club. She was the first female that of being captain at Marlow Rowing Club, which then had to change because the club supper used to be a male-only event, and the captain speaks at the club supper. So that had to change, and that was the late 80s. And so it was really sort of engaging. So we've got to go out and engage with different communities and draw them into the sport that we're very passionate about. Is that we feel that it can change people's lives. My life has certainly changed from being involved in it. And so first of all, it's about that engagement of it. Then you talk about of being fun and of engaging. And that comes down to the sort of the leaders. And this is where London Youth Rowing have been fantastic over the last couple of decades. Of really engaging with the community, of having their coaches and the people involved around the sport of more related to the communities that you're going into. If you get somebody from a private school that's have gone through from schoolboy rowing through to junior international, world championship teams, Olympic teams, they're not really the people that you can sort of thinking, oh yeah, that's a footstep that I could follow in because of the background and the history of it. So by engaging with the communities and bringing them in, the only reason I carried on rowing in that first year was because Francis Smith made it fun. We trained every day, and that made us quite good. In that Cox 4 that I said that was put together, is that in our first season, we raced 7 times and we won all 7. That was great motivation, which I didn't realise at the time, is that public schools, is that their top athletes in that year group would be rowing in their first 8, and the top schools would have a second 8. They may put a 4 out after that. So in our year group, we're not racing the best athletes in our age group. Sometimes it will be the 3rd best 4, the 5th, or even the 7th best 4 in the year group. So that put us, we're reasonably good athletes, put us up to be able to start winning races. And so that was an engagement. He made the training fun. As I said, we used to train almost every day after school within that first 2 or 3 weeks. But that's what it wasn't a hardship. It was just great that somebody was putting time and commitment into us. And we felt privileged of being involved in that. And then when we used to win these races, of then being announced in the school assembly on the Monday morning of, our rowers have been racing at Edgbaston in Birmingham or wherever it may be. And that gave us a boost of self-esteem, confidence. And so later, as we moved up the chain and trying to go to Junior World Championships and trying to be the best in our year group and the best in the country, we had been sort of bred in some ways as being winners. And so when we came to race the top crew from Eton or Shrewsbury or Radley, is that when the going got tough, is that we win races. So we dug deeper to try and win that. So it's getting that balance. And that's how it worked for us. But for other communities, it's about that engagement. It's about being out on water, something that they've never experienced before. I grew up in Marlow in Buckinghamshire. We have the River Thames flowing past. My life has been around the river, even though that I wasn't on it until I started rowing. So it's about that engagement. It's harder in bigger cities. Of something.
What the strangest thing is, Steve? We've got in London, the River Thames obviously runs straight through the middle of it, right?
Yep.
Okay. Quite a lot of the kids that we work with in our areas don't know where the River Thames is.
Yeah.
And we're in the boroughs of London where you think, right, well, all you have to do is look at a map and you know where the River Thames is. You probably go on a train that goes under it a couple of times a month, and they don't know where it is. So that's a really big sort of you're saying about being around the river and your life is sort of based around that. It's a really big shock to find that out as somebody who came from a town where there's a river going through it. It's a really, really big shock to go into a school as my first day going into a school as an LYR coach and go, well, you guys don't know where the river is, the biggest, like the most famous river in the whole country. You've never been on a boat on the river. You don't know how to get there. That is a big culture shock when you come down to London and find that some of these kids don't know where that is. And the more and more we go out into schools and we sort of engage with people and say, look, you can come and do this cool thing where we're going to go on the water, we're going to race each other, we're going to go and have a splash about and do this sort of thing. The more and more people go, oh yeah, that would be quite cool. Where are we going? Oh, we're going to the docks. Oh, we're going on the Thames. Oh, we're going to a lake in this country park somewhere over here. And they really, really enjoy it. And it's that sort of stuff that sort of makes LYR really cool, to get to work with those people. And I think what you're describing is the way that we sort of we work. We make it fun and engaging for people. And I think that's where Race the Thames hit a big note last year. Was nobody was allowed to go and do anything. So we just were all in doing the same thing together, and it was really, really cool. I'm just going to move on to another question that we've got here. Sorry, Isabel's pointing at me. I'll scroll down further. We've got, obviously, you're the chair of Henley Royal Regatta, and you, obviously, LYR are supported a bit by Henley Stewards Charitable Foundation. And they've supported the move up to Leeds. So branching out into putting LYR up into Leeds, which is really, really cool. It means we've got more people to work with and more stuff to do and a lot more going on. How important is that expansion of grassroots rowing across the country from inner cities and beyond to increasing participation, and what are the widening benefits of the sport beyond its sort of middle class sort of look? What are we in doing that? What is that pushing? If that makes sense.
It is very important from us, from Henley Royal Regatta and Henley Royal Regatta Charitable Trust, is over the last 16 years is that we've supported London Youth Rowing to over £500,000. But the schemes that have been running over that 16 years obviously were based in London. The name goes with it in some ways, and that we wanted to make sure that the fantastic work that London Youth Rowing was doing is being hopefully engaged. So we're saying London Youth Rowing is a fantastic organisation doing some fantastic work, but we can't be seen just to be pumping money into London. We want to be of around the country and giving other communities the base. So that was almost a stepping stone for London Youth Rowing to of going investigating of how they can do it. Rowing is and most sports is a people-powered sport in some ways. It's about the individual that's going. My head of the English department, Francis Smith, he was the one that was the driving force. There's a great rowing community doing similar stuff to London Youth Rowing in Warrington. And again, it's one or two individuals that are driving that. So once you have a franchise of starting spreading around, it's hard to deliver the same program. You've got to find these people that are delivering in the different communities. There are people out there. We've just got to find them. And in Leeds, you've been able to find a community based on people that have been through the program themselves in London. So that's engaging. And what that's showing is that we can go out to even more cities, towns, and engage with the community. The great example is McDonald's. It's not the highest food chain restaurant in the world, but wherever you go in the world, when you walk through those doors, you know exactly what you're going to get. And that's what we've got to be able to put forward throughout of having the diversity of rowing, is that wherever the project's set up, is that they're delivering the same program and being able to engage with adapting slightly to of cultures and that local area. But as I say, the UK on its transport systems, there's rivers and lakes that all around the country that we just need to be engaging with those communities.
I don't think I've ever been likened to a McDonald's franchise, which is pretty cool, but that's cool. So you walk into somewhere that says LYR and you immediately think the Golden Arches and double bacon McMuffin. Yeah, brilliant. But if it managed to get to that sort of level where somebody can walk into anywhere into a boat club and see that logo, see that sort of branding and think, right, okay, so I was down in London last weekend, I saw this going on the water, I can go and do this. Or I saw it on the internet, I can go and do this in my local town, would be amazing. Probably like the best thing for the sport.
And that's where the branding and the image and the programming is so important, of being able to get the rollout of wherever it is. People know what it is and what they're going to get from it.
That's brilliant. I'll buzz to a couple of other questions. Just a few things for helping out our people who are doing Race the Thames, which would be really brilliant. First of all, as a quick question to you is, what does an Olympic hero do in your spare time?
Well, you call me Olympic hero. It was many of years ago when I was competing at Olympic level. Scary enough, this year will be 22 years since I retired. Wow. So yeah, I'm a volunteer at Henley Royal Regatta, trying to help stage that event on a regular basis. I have been the performance director of Chinese rowing for the last 3 years and improved their rowing at international level. So that was a paid role, which is nice to get some paid work. But yeah, I'm involved in all sorts of things. I'm I talked about of the rowing club that I started with at Marlow. I've been president of Marlow Rowing Club for 11 years. And they're always engaging with the local community, bringing the next generation in. And so that I'm still involved around the sports, is that engaging with all sorts of different rowing communities and sporting communities, because it is very different. We've got the winter games starting in a couple of weeks' time, and I've been an ambassador.
Cannot wait. Cannot wait.
A few winter Olympic games with the British Olympic Association, which has been fantastic. This time I'll be watching it on TV.
So the question really should have been, what do you do with your time, not spare time?
Yeah, I don't have any time. That's one of the issues that I have.
Exactly. And we've got a quick question for people participating in Race the Thames. Have you got any tips around endurance and staying the course for our Race the Thames participants? So any sort of pearls of wisdom you can give to them?
I suppose the first one is coming up of doing your first session, the excitement of being online and other people around you. You've got the tendency to get overexcited and go off a little bit too hard. With rowing the Thames, it's about endurance. It's about keeping going for a long period of time. So try to manage that excitement and not go too crazy, and pace yourself to make sure that you're as strong as at your end of your stint as you are at the beginning.
That's great. I think that's probably good advice for just general athletes as well, because I jumped in on an ergo with the kids last night and died horribly. So I don't get on an ergo very often, but when I do, I scale down my expectations of what I used to be able to do and then fall short of that. So I find it very depressing. I can 100% understand that, because that was me last night in a world of pain while 3 J15 boys were sat next to me smacking their little hearts out, and I was really disappointed when they beat me by 0.5 splits, and I was just not I was not in a good place, let's put it that way. Yeah, the session's done, we're all good.
I know that world very well.
I'm just going to open it out to the floor. If anybody has any questions that they would like to either put in the chat and I'll read them out, or they want to come on direct, just put your hand up in the air or jump in, and let's see if we can get some good conversation going.
Silence.
Somebody's put in the chat tips for survival if you've gone off too hard up front on the run-in, and tips for screaming knees.
You've gone off too hard, panic, because you're never going to be able to get that one back. Yeah, you just got to reduce your pace and save your legs for a little bit later. I've done a few London marathons in my time, and what you used to find of that, this is obviously different because you're very much involved in it at the moment, is that people would do all their training and preparation for it and think, oh no, now it's the big day, so I'm going to go and buy myself a new pair of trainers and wear new kit. That's not the right thing to do, because you'll get blistered feet and rubbing on new kit on your body as well. Rowing's not quite as bad as that, but it is sort of, the more practice and preparation you can do, the better you will be within your stint that you're doing, within the activity and distance you're doing. Hopefully nobody's just turned up for day one and thinking, okay, I'm going to row the length of the Thames and be able to do that. If they can do that, we want them to be in the sport for a very long time, because they should be pretty good.
Yeah, it's a pretty brave decision to decide to do that, and if you can complete it, get over here, we'll come and teach you how to do some more.
Yeah,
definitely. Shanique's got a question. If it wasn't rowing, what other sport would you have liked to go for? Is there anything that interested you at school, or later on in life, that you decided that, oh yeah, I should have had a go at that?
Of football being the sort of the national and world sport, is that when I was a kid, the FA Cup used to be on regular TV. So it was a very, very big day within of the country's community. And I always dreamed of going to Wembley, playing in the FA Cup final. When I used to play football, I was either goalkeeper or centre forward. I was probably better at a goalkeeper than I was centre forward, and I wasn't very good at that. So I always had that dream. And coming back from Sydney Olympics in 2000, I was invited to go to Wembley for the last match before they knocked the old Wembley down, and went on the pitch at half time with Denise Lewis. And it was just a fantastic experience of walking out there. By that time, most of the crowd were buying their drinks and food at half time, and it was probably only about less than half the people in the stadium. But it was just such a buzz. So football would have been very highly up my list, but I probably would have been a better rugby player than I would be a football player.
Would you never have thought of going into like making the transition into cycling, like some of the rowers have done, and I know they've gone the other way as well? Would you never thought of doing that sort of thing?
When I was younger, cycling, everyone cycled around. Most rowers used to cycle around a bit, but it wasn't really a training activity. It's not like the boom that we've seen in the last 20 or 30 years on the cycling. I love cycling, and I do a lot of cycling now. But when you're 6'4", 100 kilos, I'm well above 100 kilos now. But when I was racing 100 kilos, is that my body shape isn't really suited for cycling. Downhill, yes, maybe, but the flat, I could get away with it, but dragging my body weight up hills was never a lot of fun. So I've never found a total downhill race. There are mountain races that do have speed things of going down, but that's too dangerous for me. Yeah, so cycling really wasn't on the agenda when I was as a kid, and that's one of the good things of the community that we have now, is there are so many different sports and activities that are out there, and that's where, as rowing, is that we all love it. We think that that's why we have to engage and go out and sell our sport. And I suppose the Olympic success that I've had, Andy went on to do, and the team is still at the top level, is that people will watch it at World Championships on the TV and the Olympics and thinking, yeah, why can't I give that a go? That's what we want to see.
I've got quick ones from our team that are rowing in the corner on my screen in Barking and Dagenham. They're set up in their leisure centre in the foyer. It's actually Bobby's sister's in there somewhere. Bobby from LYR, her sister's in there somewhere doing a bit of rowing. They've got a question. Any tips for beginners rowing their first 72k? So they're obviously doing it in a team, but have you got any tips for them on what they can do?
That the enthusiasm, again, as I spoke about, that tends to be more of using your arms than anything else. And so that the simple movements is hands, body, slide. So on the recovery is your hands move first, then your body swings over, and then you use your legs. And then once you've connected at the catch, it's the same process, but in the opposite. It's legs, body, and finishing off the stroke with your arms. What most people do for the first time on a rowing machine is use their arms, because it's the fast-moving muscle, but it's also the weakest muscle. You want to get your body weight on that handle. And so slow forward, and then try and get your body weight on that handle, and then try and get that body weight through the stroke, and then take the time on the recovery to time on the recovery. We call it the recovery for a good reason. We call it the recovery to recover before you do another effort. Recover before you do another.
Lovely, thank you. There's a really good question, which I think everybody is quite interesting. Is what are the main differences between rowing in China versus rowing in Britain in terms of sort of culture and anything else that you thought was interesting?
Culture's obviously very, very different indeed. Once you get rowers in boats and they've been doing it for a while, is rowers the same from wherever around the world. Their outlook, the way that they go about things, the engagement with the sport. I suppose where we've come from more of a university public school based is that we're a very educated sport. You see that a lot within the UK and the Western world. In China, it's almost the opposite. It's very much the sort of the poorer community in some ways, is that they have what they call the national games, which happens every 4 years after the Olympic year. And the provinces are huge within sports, and they compete at that level, and that's how they get drawn into the sport. And then if they get to the level and want to then try to row for the Asian Games or World Championships, the Olympics, then they get drawn into the national team. Pretty similar to of how we do it here in the UK, but just the basis of where we're looking at schools and universities at that young age is that they're going round to the schools and looking for the long levers and getting them into rowing, but then sort of guiding them into whatever sport their body suits. If they're showing that they potentially could give a sport a good activity.
That's great. Ian, who is actually on the call in the middle of my screen somewhere, has he's put in the chat. He's aware of the rowing centres at home Pierpont, but not many other specialist courses that aren't on rivers. Now, obviously, we're one of the specialist courses that isn't on a river. Is right outside our door. Me and Isabella are in the office at the Royal Docks. That's literally 50 meters from us over there, which is another 2K course. There's obviously one at Dorney, and he said, is there any big difference between the two, and how does it translate into national team performance?
There is a slight difference, is that depending on the depth of the water, it will feel lighter or heavier. The deeper it is, the lighter that it feels. And if you're on a very shallow lake, there tends to be more drag, and so it almost feels like somebody's holding the end of your boat and pulling you back as you're trying to float on the recovery. The biggest difference is that if you're rowing on the river, and especially in London on the tideway, is if you've got the wind with the stream, is that it will be quite flat and move you very quickly. Then you've got the opposite effect, is that if it's the wind against the tide, then it gets very rough very quickly, and it's not a very nice experience from that point of view. The problem with lakes and man-made courses, and obviously of where you are with the Royal Docks, is that whichever way the wind blows, it has an effect of the water. And so we used to, I trained down at the docks for the '84 Olympics, my first Olympic Games. We used to train down there, and that's when all the green sheds, the dockers' sheds, were still there before the airport was in the middle of it. That used to be quite sheltered, and as they knocked it all down, and it used to get very, very affected by the wind, and as the buildings have built up, it's protected a little bit more, but then can make it unfair. So traditionally in the UK, we tend to race on rivers. Every town that has a rowing club tends to have a race sometime in the season. Some of those can be reasonably straight, and some of them are quite bendy as well. So there is another knack to the sport of how to get round of bends and at the best, and not losing out from that experience.
That's great, thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions they'd like to ask? Either pop them in the chat quickly or chime in and go for it. Andy, have you got anything that you want to ask?
I've got one.
Oh, Ikem's got one. Go on, Ikem, go for it.
So just a bit of backlog for you, Steve. I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I watched a documentary on you on BBC. I can't remember what Olympics you was getting ready for, but you got ill while you was training. Now, why this story sticks with me is because I took a main message away from it. I can't remember what Olympics. I think it was Sydney. And you guys were training. You were training hard alongside Matthew. And and for some reason your training was affected, but you couldn't figure out why, and neither could your coaches. And then you was diagnosed with something, but I can't remember what it was. And you had to alter the way you was training that current moment in period. And I feel like you, if I can remember correctly, you still went on to get a gold medal that year, I believe.
I did.
I wasn't sure what it was. I don't know why I was watching it. It's just because, long story short, I wasn't big on rowing at the time, but I used to watch the rowing from about Beijing 2008 because that was one of the early events that we was any good in. So I had a big interest in it from there. And then you popped up on my screen. I was watching the documentary, and you got ill, and you still went on to win a gold medal, which was massive for me because at the time I was just getting into sports myself. Not that I didn't play sports, but into a sport of boxing that requires a lot of discipline, as you know, rowing does as well. And the main message I took from that was adversity is just preparation for greatness. And what I wanted to ask you in terms of that was, how did you prepare yourself to allow you to overcome what you was going through in order to get in the mindset and the mind frame in order to go and achieve that gold medal? Because I'm pretty sure it was Sydney, and I don't know if that was your last.
Yeah,
if I can remember correctly,
it was Sydney. Is that I had a few injuries over my career, but not too many that have affected the training. I've had two illnesses. One was colitis, and that was of early 90s, and that nearly put me out of the Barcelona Olympics in 92. And then 3 years before Sydney, I came down with diabetes. My grandfather had diabetes in his late 60s, early 70s, and I didn't know much about the condition, but I felt that you wouldn't be able to compete at the highest level with that condition. And that was 3 years out of Sydney. I remember going along to my GP. They took my blood sugar levels. It was through the roof, sent me up to the diabetic centre. And fortunately, because of probably being a 4 times Olympic gold medalist, is that I got sort of pushed in quite quickly through the process. My wife rowed internationally. She competed at the '84 Olympics, but she was also the team doctor as well. So she was very well and still is very well networked. So of picking up the right people for whatever the athlete's condition may have, of getting the best treatment for them. It just happened that the Wickham General Hospital, which is about 10 minutes away from where I live now, it was a very young up and coming diabetic specialist that I just by chance got to see. And through the consultation, I was there for about 3 hours, and I was being taught how to take insulin for the first time because my body had stopped producing insulin just very suddenly. And I was expecting at some stage he's going to tell me that my rowing career is over. And mentally, I'd sort of accepted that was going to be the case. And then just before he kicked me out of his room, he said, "I can see no reason why you can't carry on your sport and go and achieve your dreams in 3 years' time in Sydney," which wasn't what I was expecting. So that was luck in some ways of postcode medicine, that of living that close to a hospital where there was a very young, forward-thinking diabetic specialist. He has now become a world specialist in diabetes and sport, and travels around and lecturing all around the world. And so, if I hadn't been here, then the advice may be different. And then what we did is that we got experts in each part of the field, because he felt that he could advise and he could do it from the clinical side, but he was uncertain of how that was going to affect in a race situation, or the volume of training that we had to do. And one of the things that I found very, very difficult to overcome was with the actual getting the volume of the training needed to be in the condition to race. The racing was actually the easier part of it. It was the preparation that was the hard. And he used to enjoy the way that I could describe that I was feeling. So being on the rowing machine of doing a 2K rowing test, I would feel that I was good, and I feel that I could do a best time, and trying, because that's what you're always looking for, to improve your 2K of time, to get you into the team and show improvement. And I would get sort of a third into it, and it would be like somebody turning a light switch, energy-wise, from on to off. Now, normally what you get is that fatigue comes in relatively slowly, and that you know it's coming from a long way out. And I was getting 1 second, I was fine. The next second, the next stroke, I just had no energy. So it was blocking the energy systems. And then we got of a number of experts in different fields to try and help us build up. His confidence, the guy called Ian Gavin, his confidence was amazing, because he always gave me the impression he knew all the answers. When I came to race the first time, it was one of the World Cup races. It was live on BBC TV. He was watching from home, and he describes it as the Doctor Who moment, that when we got there on the start line, he was hiding behind the sofa, peering over, not sure if he should look, what's going to happen here. But to me, it was actually, no, you're going to have no problems at all, this, and this, and I, stupid enough, believed him. Fortunately, it all worked out well. It was struggle to get there on many ways, but got to Sydney in the British top boat, the 4, and we went on to take the gold medal, which made it 5 for me, and then I could retire quite happily.
Yeah, we'll just get another one, and then I'll decide that I'll just pack it in there, and that'll be done.
Not quite as laid back as that, but yeah.
That's amazing, though, because
give somebody else a chance. Let Andy come onto the team.
That's amazing, because I remember watching it about 5 years ago, and I stayed watching it because I like watching documentaries on athletes train, just to kind of gain an insight into their training and into their mindset they're taking to competing at the highest level in their respective field. And then when I saw that, I was like, this might be interesting, so let me keep it on. And yeah, I remember that quite vividly. Just one more with me. So ever since then, I like to do my research on who I was watching on TV at the time, because I didn't know who he was, I'll be very honest, at the time. And then I went to go and Google it at the time. At that time I was watching it, and it said he was one of our most decorated British rowers ever, and I had a certain amount of gold medals at Olympics and stuff. And I was watching a documentary with Matthew, and you training hard with Matthew and all your other teammates. I don't know why I remember Matthew. Matthew was shown a lot in that documentary. Are you guys still close friends? Do you lot still talk and stuff?
We are close friends. We don't see each other that often nowadays, after sort of 11 years of our life of training. He's 8 years younger than I am. And the 11 years that we rode with each other, we would see each other almost every day. And so we were probably sick of the sight of each other by the time that I decided to retire. He carried on for another 4 years. And he is godfather to my eldest daughter, and I'm godfather to one of his sons. And so there is that close link from that point of view. But because the sport is so close and intense, and of the sense of what you as a team has got to work together to achieve what you have to achieve. Even if I don't see him for long periods of time, when we do, it's like we've never been apart, and that's really quite nice to be part of. So yeah, we are still pretty close. We are still pretty competitive with each other. More on the golf course than in a gym anymore, because both of us in the gym are not very impressive anymore. And we used to have competitions of, within rowing, it's quite good to be quite heavy, as long as you're not carrying too much fat. So we were always weighing in, trying to be slightly heavier than the other one. And now it's the opposite, is that we want to try and be the lightest of the other one. And I think I'm the winner of that competition for the last few years.
Just for your information,
he's actually travelling out to the Winter Games. He works for the BBC, so he's commentating at the Winter Games in Beijing. So I can say that because I know he's not going to get to see this.
just a last from me, because why I was really interested in you at the time as well, because obviously I like I like to do my research, and I saw that he was a Chelsea fan, which was a touch. So I knew from that he was a top lad. If it makes any difference. And yeah, so like I said, why I really wanted to get on there and ask you is because that documentary at the time was massive for me in terms of persevering and achieving your goals while adversity comes along. So I just wanted to say thank you for making that documentary.
It was commissioned by the BBC. Matthew and I did a short one with 6 other sports on the build up to the Atlanta Games, and it didn't really make a very big impact. It wasn't really picked up by anybody. And then the BBC asked if they could do this documentary on us on our last 3 years working towards Sydney being self-filmed. And then rowing from a pair that Matthew and I were in Atlanta, we moved more into the 4, so Tim Foster and James Cracknell came in. So Matthew and I weren't that keen of doing that documentary again, but Tim and James really wanted to do it. We had a great fun of doing it. It was most of it was self-filmed, and there were a few characters in the rowing team that when they saw us having our own video cameras would do their own filming. None of that would get broadcast on the BBC, which Andy would know of characters like Bobby Thatcher and of some of those guys. But the BBC, because we used to film and then send the tapes on each week, and they used to love of seeing the real life documentary of what life was in the wider British rowing team and the things that we used to get up to. But we used to play tricks on each other all the time. So I remember on one training camp in Spain, in Seville, is that we're in a 4-story hotel. One of the floors had a statue outside the lift, and we finished having dinner that one night, and Tim and James took this statue up 2 floors and got the key to our room and placed it in our bathroom in front of the toilet. And Matthew had gone off for some physio treatment. I went back up to our room, and the curtains had been drawn. It was dark, and there was a little light in the bathroom. As most hotels, as you walk through the door, the bathroom is the first thing that you come to, and then there's a little corridor opens up to your room. And I had a book in my hand. I was going to put that down before then going to the toilet. As I sort of walked past the toilet door and looked, and there's this sort of shadowy figure standing in my bathroom, I sort of leapt out of my skin in fright, thinking then I was in the wrong room and of seeing somebody that was standing in front of the toilet. And then I was desperate to go to the toilet for a wee, so I went round the statue, didn't move it, did what I had to do, and then went out. And I didn't know if Matthew was involved in this as well. So I went and saw him in the physio room. Then we came back to the room. I'd closed the bathroom door, and then he went to clean his teeth before going to bed. And then he experienced that. So that I knew that he wasn't involved in it. But they'd set up a camera in the bathroom, one of our BBC cameras, and filmed the whole process. And it was just getting to the end of the tape when I came in, and you sort of see me have jumped with fright as I walked into the room. And then we just sort of played it back, and we were absolutely killing ourselves with laughter. One of the tricks that we played on Tim and James is that we were sponsored by Lombard, Matthew and I, and then we were able to introduce them onto the team, and they were given cars, and they were both the same model of of rover cars, and obviously digital key fob entry. And they used to park in the car park in very different places. And so that we would go to their kit bags and take off the electronic fob and move it around. So they would go to their car and try and get in, and it couldn't do it. Now, it shows their character. Tim is very laid back, and he would just get the key out, unlock it, and drive off home. James, being a little bit more intense, he would be phoning up the dealer and saying, there's something wrong with my car. You've got to come and sort it out now. You've got to do this. And then the next day we would swap it back so it would work. And this went on for 2 months before they realized it was us that was doing it. And then they didn't realize until they parked next to each other and they went to press their key fob and they unlocked the car, the opposite car that, so we had a lot of fun. And again, as we talked about earlier, it's about having fun and engagement. And there's sort of things like that go on all the time with bigger teams.
Sure, when you watch it back, it brings back a lot of memories. I wish I had the same BBC camera when I first joined LYR, and everyone in LYR was telling me, oh yeah, Andy works for us and he's won medals in the Olympics. And I was like, oh, I said to Andy, oh, do you know Steve Redgrave? He said, yeah, of course. And if it stirs the pot a little bit, Andy said he would have absolutely smashed you in your heyday on the wall.
Really? Is
Yes.
that how it went again?
Yeah, yes, Ikem. Come on.
Is that right? Okay, thanks.
Let's go.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Ikem, I'd start running now.
That's an easy one to answer, is that the games that I went to, I was one of the best athletes at that. I had to retire in 2000 because I knew that my time was up, and the next generation that coming in, and Andy was not quite the next generation from that, but soon after that, and that you've got to be better than the previous generation to win those medals. So the 3 Olympic gold medals that Andy's got, if I was still on the team, or at the ability that I was when I was competing, I would have struggled to get into the teams. So you're probably right there.
I'm good. That never happened.
He's just being nice.
And I'll qualify that Steve would be in champion whichever Olympics he would have gone for.
I appreciate that, Steve. Thanks for sharing.
No worries.
I was
Alright,
wondering
okay.
if I could
Yeah, go on, Bobby.
quickly jump in with a question. Like, I was thinking, obviously you've obviously over the years had a lot of wonderful and maybe some not so wonderful experiences, and I just wondered whether you'd forgiven the Top Gear a lot yet for what they did to your garden that time.
Don't bring up Top Gear. Still haven't got over it. And that you would have seen from that I have a reasonable sized garden. And I have a sit-on lawnmower, and for the next 3 or 4 years after that, every time I was out cutting the lawn, you'd sort of go over the trenches that they dug. Very frustrating. I still haven't seen the program back in full. I feel that I've watched it because there's so many people that have told me clips about it, and I feel I've watched it, but I did live it at the time. So no, you've made me very angry for the rest of the day.
Oh, sorry. Maybe we could bring it back with you sharing. Maybe, obviously, you've had loads of wonderful experiences, but what would be the highlight of the opportunities and experiences that you've had over your career? And
obviously many, but I suppose that I had this. I started in 1976 of rowing, and I spoke earlier a little bit of how I got involved in the sport. From the age of 15, 16, people were telling me that I was capable of being a world champion. And I thought, well, that sounds quite nice, but why not Olympic champion? So by the age of 16, 17, I targeted to try to become Olympic champion. The first games that I had the opportunity of going to was Moscow as an 18-year-old in 1980. And because of the political fallout at that time, even though that we qualified on time-wise, is that the team was reduced because there wasn't the funding to be able to send a normal-sized team there. So I didn't get to go to that, which is still very disappointing. But 4 years later of going to LA, first time I've been to America, the normal rowing program is that the World Championships tend to have races in the afternoon, and we were racing in the morning because of the size of the lake, the wind picking up. So they had racing very early in the morning. So all our training, 3 weeks preparation to it, was brilliant. We used to get up at 3:45 in the morning, which wasn't very pleasant, do our 2 training sessions, and by 10 o'clock in the morning, you'd finished your day's training. So we used to go down to the beach and a bit of swimming and having fun. This is not what the normal preparation for Olympic Games would be, where you're sort of sitting around waiting for your work session and saving all your energy. But you knew that you were going to have a good night's sleep before of then doing the same sort of routine. So that was pretty special. And then getting to the final is that the rowing was actually at Santa Barbara, so a few hours north of that. We had our own village for the canoeists and rowers. But I can remember of being, as I was 22, we'd come favourites to win only 2 months before, and looking across our opposition and thinking, can we do it? Can we do this now? Is this going to happen at this moment? And then you start freaking out and doubt coming in your mind. And I can remember my thoughts of being, okay, if it doesn't happen now, which is not the thought you want at that particular time, is that I'm still young enough, maybe in 4 years' time, I have another chance. And then the starter goes through the roll call of the race, and you're thinking, well, no, it's going to happen now. And once you start racing, then everything sort of takes care of itself in some ways. We took an early lead. The Americans rode through us, and then we fortunately rode them down in the last 250 meters to win. And the sense of relief. It wasn't excitement of winning an Olympic gold medal. It was the relief that we'd achieved of what I'd been dreaming of for 8 years, 10 years to get to that point. And then the sort of the emotion hits you of them having an Olympic gold medal put around your neck. Our days of the British teams now is that we win quite a lot of gold medals in all the games apart from the last one. Is that we won 5 or less gold medals, not as a sport, but as a country. So to have that moment of standing on that podium, you think you're a national hero. And I can remember we came back to my hometown, and all 5 of us from the Cox 4 that won out in LA, we were driven around my hometown in an open top bus and thought this was just absolutely amazing. And there were people just doing their weekly shopping at Marlow High Street and thinking, well, what's going on here? And how the sport changed from 84 to 2000. We had a similar open top bus for the 4 that came back from Sydney, and a few other Olympians from different sports and the sport of rowing that are competing was with us. And the town was absolutely packed. Is that there were 25,000 people that came to my small community to see us on our homecoming, and that was just very, very special and proud to be part of.
Sounds like such an emotional roller coaster, and yeah, like I think even obviously the different level that the guys are competing in this Race the Thames challenge on, those nerves and emotions are there no matter what the challenge is. But I can imagine on that stage it's
well my experience is that whatever you tend to do when you're putting your reputation or having a challenge of some sort, they're nerves of some sort. And the bigger the challenge, the nerves don't get bigger, they just start earlier. So for Olympic Games, you can sit down 3 or 4 years before and start thinking about that race and get very nervous about it. I don't think there's many people that are doing the challenge this week that have been getting nervous about it 4 years ago. But probably this morning and maybe yesterday a little bit nervous of what they've let themselves in for. So it's the same feeling in some ways, just starts earlier at the bigger races it tends to be.
Yeah. Do you have any, I guess, tips or tricks for handling those nerves and making sure you use them right?
Everyone's different of how they deal with nerves. In Sydney, it was quite a very different of the four of us. Matthew just used to curl up in a ball and go to sleep between the warm-up session and the hour before the race. Tim used to just read a book and just relax from that point of view. James used to play music on his headphones that used to annoy everybody else because he used to play it quite loud and you couldn't really pick out the tune other than the sort of going on. I would sort of just sit quietly. I was, if you describe it in some ways as the tactician, is that we have a race plan that we want to unfold during the race. But when you're racing 5 other boats, there's other people that are trying to throw spanners in the works to put you off your stride of what you're doing. So I used to sort of run through and go over and over and over. If this happens, how am I going to respond to this to communicate to the crew of what we need to do? And as favourites going into the race, you don't want surprises because surprises normally means you lose. So you go through thousands and literally thousands of processes, and hopefully, if something doesn't quite go to plan, you've still got an answer that you can move to go to. Fortunately, it went to plan reasonably. It was a lot tighter than we hoped it to be, but the outcome was still the one that we all wanted.
Well, look, Steve, I think we owe you a massive thank you. I mean, when we first spoke, I talked about a 15 or 20 minute chat, and it's turned into a good hour. So I will call it there. Thank you very, very much for your time. I mean, you always have been and always will be an inspiration to this sport. And I hope we as a charity, as LYR, will introduce many more thousands to that list of people who will see what you've done, recognise it for what it's done for this country. So thank you. That's it. Right.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks to everybody for the work that you're doing at London Youth Rowing. Is that what we talk about of involving people, of changing people's lives. The sport has changed Andy's and my life hugely. Is that the work that you're putting in could have that same process. What we would love is to have multiple Olympic gold medalists coming out of it, but that's not the aim of the game. It's giving people's experience, giving them life skills that they can deal with whatever situation they're in. So it goes out to me to thank you guys for what you do and keep up the good work.
Appreciate it, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve. It's been really, really interesting to interview as well. Quite nerve-wracking, but it was good fun.
You've done a good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there, Andy.
Yeah, that's it. So Steve, so we're still kind of we'll come off the live platform now, but we'll